It had been a few sunrises since Dofreckle died. Shadeheart felt like she was still carrying the dead weight of the she-cat's body as she and Modeltoft followed the Thunderpath. Up ahead, there'd be a dusty Thunderpath branching off this one. It marks the northern border of Shimmer Clan and Dahlia Clan's territories, so as long as they stayed on the far side, they would be alright. Or so Modeltoft said. She used to live at the foot of the mountain further north, so this area was familiar to her. Shadeheart had to trust in her sense of direction. She tried not to dwell on her grief or what was to come, but the thoughts swarmed her mind like angry hornets. Dofreckle had always spoken so fondly of StarClan and how they helped keep her birth clan safe. On the surface, the spirits of one's ancestors watching over them from the beyond was almost comforting. However, StarClan was generation upon generation of clan cats. No doubt they would be the same as the living cats, if they do exist. Did they even allow Dofreckle into their hunting grounds? If they hadn't, where was her spirit now? When Shadeheart slept among the glowing mushrooms of the Moon Hollow, would anything happen? Tonight, all of Rogue Clan would have to face the judgment of StarClan. After crossing a bridge and walking off the path for some time, they finally reached an ancient tree. Shadeheart hadn't smelled or heard any other cats in the area, so they should be safe for the time being. Modeltoft padded closer, sniffing around the roots. I think this is it. Joining her, Shadeheart could smell the scent markers from all three clans covering the trunk. It has to be. A massive, ancient weeping willow. According to the stories, the entrance to the burrow underneath is hidden in a hollow of the tree. Many seasons ago, it was the camp of Hollow Clan. Something caused many cats to leave and form the current clans, but some remained to stand guard over the place. After they were suddenly wiped out by illness, glowing mushrooms began to grow inside the burrow. From then on, any cat who slept there could visit StarClan in their dreams. Circling the tree, they spotted the hollow, and sure enough, there was the entrance. Shadeheart paused, silently bracing herself, before plunging inside. The tunnel was long, and the air got damp and musty further below. It was a practical location. Like the cave, it only had one entrance. Any invaders would be forced into one-on-one close-quarters combat with whatever guards were posted inside. There would be ample time to alert the rest of the clan and get any kits or elders deeper inside for safety. However, the tunnels or the entrance burrow might collapse under the right conditions. It could even flood with enough rain. Just thinking about being trapped in this place was making Shadeheart's pelt bristle. The silent darkness and the strange building tension didn't help. It felt ominous, stepping into the camp of a dead clan. In a few fox lengths, the tunnel opened into a large space before she could get too uneasy. It was cold inside and dimly lit by hundreds of mushrooms, which had an odd smell. A chill ran down Shadeheart's spine, and her whiskers tingled. Modeltoft looked around with huge eyes as she stepped inside. This is actually quite lovely. Let's not waste time, Shadeheart prompted, her tail flicking. Right. The medicine cat shook her head. It'll be moon high soon. Shadeheart carefully stepped around the fungi as she made her way to the middle of the burrow. The two she-cats lay down in the clear spot and rested their heads on their paws. Do you think something will happen? Shadeheart asked. Will StarClan reject us? Will we have to give up on Dofreckle's dream? Modeltoft hummed. I like to keep an open mind. Shadeheart closed her eyes. These things matter to the clans. If we ever hope to be accepted by them, we have to follow their rules. Dofreckle is counting on us. I know. So, we spend the night here, and whatever happens, after we go home tomorrow, you're Shadestar, a leader with 9 lives, Modeltoft decided. I suppose so, she murmured. Such a tough old scrap. At least she has a medicine cat she can depend on. Both she-cats were exhausted after the long journey and began to drift off. The scents of mushrooms and dirt faded away, replaced by open air, plants, and prey. Shadeheart didn't notice at first, until she suddenly picked up a painfully familiar scent. A warm body pressed against hers, and a voice filled her ears. "I'm so glad you made it." Shadeheart jumped and whipped around, coming face to face with Dofreckle. The young she-cat was looking right at her with glowing green eyes, and her fur was shining with tiny lights like stars. Dofreckle? It was Mottletuft who spoke. She was here too. The three of them were nestled in a patch of tall, pale grass. The young warrior stood. "I'd love to catch up, but we have a ceremony to conduct." "Wait, Dofreckle!" Shadeheart scrambled to follow her, with Mottletuft on her heels. "This is the way it has to be. These dreams don't last long, and there are rules we spirits are bound to," she replied, leading the two into a small clearing. Here, a group of starry cats were waiting. Shadeheart eyed them warily. Like Dofreckle, their coats sparkled and their eyes glowed. The color filled their eyes completely, with a brighter shade to mark where the usual iris would be, but no pupil. It made it harder to read them. They all stood together, ears and tails relaxed, no sign of hostility, making them look eerie, blank. "Mottletuft, I need you to stay back there, okay?" Dofreckle instructed. The tortoiseshell nodded and sat at the edge of the clearing. "For the ceremony? Or did they want to keep her back so she can't help when the fight breaks out?" Dofreckle had been trained as a warrior, but she has no real experience. They're outnumbered here, so the two of them could be easily overwhelmed. Could Shadeheart and Mottletuft even escape this place? If they did, what would happen to Dofreckle? The brown she-cat herded Shadeheart to the center of the space and reached up to press her nose against her head. "Now, with this life I give you courage. Use it to persevere despite your fears and anxieties." Before Shadeheart could react, a blazing heat rushed through her body. Her heart raced, and she felt the same rush of adrenaline that came from grappling with a predator. When the sensation faded, she was trembling. What was that? As she was gathering herself, a new cat appeared before her, a white tom covered in gray patches. "All forms of life come with pain. You'll have to bear it," he meowed quietly, then pressed his nose against her head too. "I am Slushpatch of Shimmer Clan, and with this life I give you endurance. Use it to help your clan survive the difficult times ahead." Again, a rush of powerful sensations overwhelmed her. This time it was weariness, like every muscle in her body was aching, but she also felt the strength needed to push through it. They were all going to be like this, weren't they? Why would any cat wish for this, on themselves or anyone else? The next cat to approach was an old gray and white tabby tom. He was silent until his nose touched Shadeheart's head, and she braced for impact. "I am Murkleaf of Spruce Clan, and I give you a life for difficult choices. Use it to guide your clan when there is no right answer." Once again, Shadeheart was almost knocked off her paws. Would she be able to handle this? The pain of each life was comparable to the pain of losing Dofreckle. She'd never experienced such unbearable pain before that night. Broken bones, deep bites, she'd been through it all, but no physical injury was even close. Another old tom. This one was dark brown and scruffy. "I am Bushtangle from Dahlia Clan, and with this life I give you devotion. Use it to devote yourself to your clan." Thank goodness, this one wasn't as painful as it was intense. Still, Shadeheart was ready to flop onto the grass. She was barely paying attention to the next four cats who approached, knowingly subjecting her to this torture. Honesty, strength, humility, instinct, they all flew over her head. Finally, the pale shape of a young silver-coated she-cat stepped up to her. The touch of her pale nose was faint. "My name is Icewish, and I am a warrior of Hollow Clan. With this life, I give you acceptance. Use it to welcome change and the challenges you face." That was 9 by Shadeheart's count. At last it was over. Icewish stepped back, and Dofreckle took her place again. Now we hail you by your new name, Shadestar. You now have the 9 lives of a leader, and StarClan grants you guardianship of Rogue Clan. Defend it well, care for young and old, and live each life with pride and dignity, she declared. The gathered cats began to yowl her new name, their voices seeming to reach far and wide. Even more joined them as eyes watched from the trees around them. Shadestar stood in the center of the 100 of fixed gazes. It felt like her heart was in her throat, and her instincts told her to run for her life. The last time she saw so many cats in one place, she was ambushed and nearly killed. It was the familiar sense of Dofreckle and Mottletuft that kept her from falling apart. It all began to fade away as the brown tabby purred. Take care, Shadestar. A moment later, she jerked awake, back in the burrow. Her pelt fluffed up with fear, and her lungs ached as she gasped for breath. She had the impulse to bolt for the tunnel and get out of the suffocating hole, but that would put her out in the open without knowing if it was safe. She couldn't leave Mottletuft behind either. Shadestar turned to the tortoiseshell, ready to urge her out of this place, but she hadn't woken up. She laid on her side, her paws and ears twitching. Mottletuft? Shadestar meowed, giving her a nudge. She didn't react. Something has to be wrong. Is it possible to get trapped in a StarClan dream? Shadestar couldn't imagine what they could do to Mottletuft after what she'd been through. She couldn't just sit here, but how could she help? Why do dangers she can't confront keep looming over them? As she was silently pacing, Mottletuft suddenly shot up, her pupils blown wide. She looked dazed as she glanced around. You didn't wake up when I did. What happened? Shadestar asked, containing her nerves thanks to years of practice. Medicine cats have their own naming ceremonies. My name is still Mottletuft, they just made it official. Shadestar nodded quietly. Hopefully, a medicine cat naming ceremony was more akin to a warrior ceremony. We should leave before we're found, Mottletuft said, carefully getting to her paws. Right, Shadestar sighed. She quickly followed Mottletuft through the tunnel and breathed a sigh of relief when they found the field outside empty. The worst of it was over. They just had to make it back home now. Shadestar's mind kept wandering back to the ceremony, seeing Dofreckle again after burying her body. The way her eyes seemed so knowing and distant. Even if it was brief, it was such a comfort to hear her voice and smell her scent again. Shadestar didn't think she could have gotten through that ceremony without her there. She started to wonder who those other cats were. They claimed to be members of the clans, one of them even from Hollow Clan. What reason did they have to take part in the ceremony? Could they sympathize with Rogue Clan like Dofreckle did? Or were they planning something more sinister? There's no telling what their motives are. StarClan supposedly has the power to see all that the living clans get up to and share information with those who have a close bond with them. They're like invisible spies that can't be stopped. Who knows what these all-seeing cats would share with the clans? Now that Rogue Clan has interacted with them directly, the other clans are sure to hear of it. The question is, what will they do with that knowledge? Shadestar's paws shook with every step, and her mind was whirling. Already she was thinking up ways to prepare for every worst-case scenario that popped into her head. If any of her clanmates died, their blood would be on her paws too.